Hey, what is up guys? It's Stan here back with another video. In this one, we're going to be taking a look at the brand new iPhone 13 Pro I've got right here. And in this video, I want to really compare and contrast it with the previous generation, the iPhone 12 Pro. I've had the Pro 12 for a year now, and I've got my hands on the brand new 13, and I want to take a look at these small little differences, compare, contrast, and really delve deep into what makes the 13 Pro worth upgrading to, or at least if you choose not to upgrade, what are you going to be missing out on if you choose not to upgrade. So with that said, let's get into it. As you can see here, I went with a white 13 Pro coming from a black 12 Pro. Color really doesn't make a difference in the big picture, so I decided to change it up a little bit. Now, as you can see, the two phones are very similar. And let's talk about the form factor first. And I've got my little notes here. First up is the Face ID notch on the 13 Pro. The 13, the new phone, has a smaller notch. They decreased it by a little bit. It's not actually significantly different, honestly, when you use it. You do have a little bit more real estate. However, the phone really doesn't actually use that real estate any better than the old phone, meaning the carrier logo, carrier name up top, and your three little icons of signal, Wi-Fi, and battery are basically the same, and you don't even get anything different from going from the 12 to the 13 with a little bit more real estate. It's nice that it's smaller, but it's not going to be earth-shattering. Next, on the back of the phone, one of the biggest things that you're going to notice going from the older phone to the newer one is the camera size. The camera bump on the 13 Pro has gotten significantly larger. If you thought that the camera bump on the 12 was big, the camera bump on the 13 is chunky. This is primarily due to, I guess, different lenses or new lenses, new camera sensors on the inside. I think we got the optical image stabilizer from the 12 Pro Max that was in that phone last year. In the regular 13 Pro, you don't have to get the Max now for that. So that's going to be a little bit, going to make everything a little bit thicker. And I guess just the larger aperture, the better sensor, better lens in the 13 Pro is going to give you that larger bump. And when you have it side by side with the previous generation phone, it is pretty significant. Another thing you'll really quickly realize when you pick up the new phone is that the power button and the volume button and the vibrate switch or the silence switch is a little bit shifted compared to the old phone. All of the buttons and switches are actually a little bit lower on the phone, so it's actually easier to reach just one-handed and use it, operate it with just your one hand. So before you had to reach further up on the phone to get that power button and the volume buttons. Now it's, especially if you have smaller hands, it's going to be a little bit easier to push those buttons. And overall, I think it's a welcome change. And the last thing about these two phones physically is that the new phone, the 13 Pro, is going to be a little bit heavier than the 12 Pro. That's primarily because the battery is a little bit bigger on the 13 Pro, and indeed, you're going to feel that battery size increase as well as that battery life increase. According to my measurements here, the 13 Pro comes in at 7.2 ounces, while the 12 Pro comes in at 6.6 ounces. That's about a 9% increase in weight. So if you have them side by side, you can feel just a little bit difference in the weight. But then again, overall, it's not a significant increase in weight. So with the physical stuff out of the way, let's talk about the screen next, because I think the screen on the 13 Pro is going to be the biggest improvement, or one of the bigger reasons why you may actually want to upgrade to this phone. New this year is a brand new 120 Hertz display. We were originally rumored to have the screen with the 12 Pro, but it looks like the supply chains and whatever, they couldn't get it into the phones in time, so they bumped it to this year's phone, and indeed, this is a very significant upgrade. what you'll feel is that even though the phone itself, of course, every year the phone gets faster, but what you'll feel is that it just feels snappier. The animations are smoother. And the way you unlock the phone, the way it zooms in, the animations of the icons coming up or the app, fully filling the screen, everything just feels buttery smooth. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why you would want to upgrade to something like this. If you have one of the newer iPad Pros with ProMotion, the 120 hertz display, it's going to feel just like that. And it is a really welcome change on the iPhone. Also, the screen itself is a little bit brighter than previous years. Apple claims that it is about 25% brighter, up to 1200 nits peak brightness. I never thought that the 12 Pro was an issue with brightness. The 13 Pro, if they say it's brighter in the sunlight, it's certainly not a bad thing. Now, let's talk about the camera, which is the second biggest reason why people would probably want to upgrade to this phone, because the camera is brand new. It's got bigger apertures, it's got bigger sensors, or the sensors got a little bit different, especially with the normal or the main camera having that optical stabilized sensor. And there's also the cinematic mode that people like to talk about. Now, where to begin? So let me start with the cinematic mode. Honestly, the cinematic mode people are raving about. It allows you to use the machine learning algorithms. It's kind of like portrait mode, only in video format. If you remember portrait mode, you could have the background blurred out. Well, in cinematic mode here, you can focus rack or change your focus points and have that blurry background kind of shift as you focus from one point to another point. It's cool, however, it's not perfect because the aberrations or the fuzziness that you may sometimes see in portrait mode, you sometimes get a little bit of that in cinematic mode as well. So you'll get that fuzzy outline, and maybe the machine learning isn't perfect where it starts to blur out some parts of the stuff that you want to have in focus. So it probably is something that's going to improve over time, but it's not perfect right now. And honestly, I can't see professionals using this because professionals have very nice cameras, lenses to have this effect. And if you're using an iPhone to shoot some of these things, I don't see that being a major reason why they would get the phone. I mean, it's a nice little gimmick, but I don't see it more than a gimmick, just like portrait mode, honestly. Now, what I do really like is the main lens's bokeh effect. When you do change focus without cinematic mode, with just regular photo or regular video, when you change from one target to another target, you do have that really nice change in depth of field, and that looks pretty good. It's not with any of that computational machine learning, it's just the effect of the aperture and the lens and the way it shifts focus, so that's really good. Now that said, it's a pro and a con, right? Now the phone does have a capability or a feature that shifts from the normal lens to the ultra wide lens as you move closer and further away from an object. If you're taking a photo, for example, and you want to get a little closer to your subject, and it shifts from the normal lens to the ultra wide lens to get you that extra closeness, you lose that bokeh, and it's a little bit jarring, and you really can't control it manually. It's a thing that has to do with the distance and the minimum focusing distance, but it's all automatic. And the only way to change it back to the other lens is to pull back from your subject, and then it'll switch. You'll see that switch and it's pretty obvious when you lose that blurry background, and then there's a little shift in the perspective as it shifts from one lens to the other lens. But there's no way to do that manually. And I kind of wish that there was a button to say, I want to use this lens or I want to use that lens. Or at least it'll tell you which lens you're using. Right now, it's all completely automatic. This is purely software. I'm sure we're going to get better software down the road. So that's something to look out for. Now, with all that said here, there is a really good reason why it does shift from one lens to the other, because the ultra wide lens is really, really sweet in that it has a very nice macro. Or is it the ultra wide? Is it the ultra wide? Maybe, I think it is the ultra wide. It's not the narrow one, but either way, the phone has a really, really nice macro function where you can get really, really close to your subject and whatever you're shooting. And I've took a few shots of some plants and the effect is pretty amazing. I was only a few centimeters away from the leaves and the peppers, and you can see the detail, and it's really awesome actually. With the camera discussion out of the way, the last thing I want to talk about is the cases and the Magsafe with the 13 Pro. There was some complaints about Magsafe being a little bit too weak with the 12 Pro, how things would just kind of slide right off, especially the Apple Wallet. And indeed, that was an issue. And it seems, anecdotally at least, that the 13 Pro Magsafe is slightly stronger. It's not significantly stronger. It's still gonna come off if you hit it the wrong way, but the top magnet, the top portion of this magnet where the main force is applied is a little bit stronger. However, the bottom portion, the alignment magnet, is still a little bit on the weak side. And I've got both an old wallet, original, I think this was saddle brown wallet, and this is the golden brown new one for the 13. Is still not enough to keep the wallet attached to the phone. That's kind of where the cases come in, and where did I put my case? And I think the best case for a wallet to have it stick to the wallet is the silicone case. This is what I used all of last year up until now actually, and this has worked great for me. So a silicone case with the leather wallet, it sticks on, and really that extra bit of adhesion force, this isn't really going to go anywhere. So the stronger magnet is appreciated, and the leather on leather does work, but definitely silicone and leather, when you put those together, the wallet's not going to go anywhere. So bringing it back to the Magsafe here, the Magsafe is slightly stronger. It's not going to be significantly different. If you have, let's say, those stands, can you see this? Yeah, this stand right here. It doesn't feel any significantly different, but perhaps like a wall, that little bit does actually help. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what the differences are with the 12 and the 13 Pros. And if you do decide to purchase the 13, at least you'll know what you're getting. Or even if you don't purchase the 13, you're happy with your 12, at least you know what the differences are. Anyway, you've been watching Super User Stan, and if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, and if you want to see more tech videos, perhaps consider subscribing. As always, I'll see you guys in the next one.